Alicia, can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you. How you guys doing? Can you hear me? It looks a little bit choppy. So when you spoke, I heard you, and then when it went back to you, it took a little while.
Perfect. 1 second. Yep, I can hear you well.
All right, cool. Yeah, this looks better now. Perfect. And how do you pronounce your name? Is it Bazi?
1 second. Let me figure it out. Bossy's good. It was so when I first came to States. 1 second. 1 second. Let me do one thing before. Yep. Should be good. So when I first came to States, it was, I want to say back in 2008, I came to Chicago, and so my full name was Silly. And it was funny. I went to play basketball, and when we were playing, the people would ask me what's 10 times saying Basi what? And I'm like, okay, Basi. So it has been 12 years, and I'm pretty comfortable with that.
All right, sounds good. I'm going to pull up my shared screen just to make sure that everything's working okay.
So you can hear me well now, right?
Yeah, much better.
It's not slow, it's perfect.
Yeah, much better.
Okay, okay. Oh, this is looking nice.
Good. Hope you guys like it.
Okay, let's wait for 2 more minutes or maybe 3 more minutes. I know there were about 20 or 25 people signed up.
Okay.
So we can wait until half. And how is everything going there now? Are the gyms starting to be back open or not yet?
I'm in Los Angeles County, so we have the strictest lockdown procedures right now. So we're still waiting word on a couple of organizations that kind of would allow that outside of the city regulations. So right now for us, we're not open, but I've heard some other teams that are in
Okay.
some other counties are practicing.
Okay, got it. Got it. That's nice. At
So
least
you're,
it's getting better and getting back to
yeah,
normal.
for sure.
And I'm still trying to figure out if my signal is coming late to you or it's normal.
You just chop up every now and
Hopefully it
then.
will be
So
better through the prison. Okay, got it.
Yeah. So it's when you are talking, it's okay, and then every now and then it's a little choppy. Have you had any issues with any of your other talks, or everything's been smooth?
Okay. Yeah, something's wrong with my internet today. Figured out, I want to say 15-minute internet connection is a little bit slower for some reason. A host, just so it's not that I'm hearing me well. So I wanted to say thank you, Alicia, for your time. Thank you for doing the presentation, and thank you for being with us. I'm really excited to hear your blueprints and just to learn from it. I'm sure that the other people are too. And so now it's stage is on you.
All right, ready to get going?
Yep.
All right, perfect. So hey, everybody, thanks for tuning in today. My name is Alicia Komaki. I'm the head girls coach at Sierra Canyon School in Los Angeles, California. And today's conversation will be about running a high-level practice, a blueprint. And I chose those words carefully because I think that I want to make sure I didn't say the blueprint. In no way is this the only way to do things. I know that we all prepare, we plan, and we prioritize differently. So I just wanted to share with you some of the ways that we do things at Sierra Canyon, and I have found for us to be successful in the last 8 years. So the first step here is preparation, and I'm going to show you 5 kind of tools that you should go through to prepare before you even begin to plan and prioritize practice. So the first one is to make sure that you know your team. That would be kind of more so their personality and their mental mindset outside of just their basketball skills. And your team involves you, it involves your staff, it involves your players, and then anybody else that might be involved with your organization. So I'm going to show you a couple examples of ways that we do that. I'm going to cover this stuff pretty quickly because there's a lot. If you guys saw the outline of that presentation, there's a lot of stuff I want to cover today. So the first one, in knowing our team and knowing our players, we give some player evaluations. So this is just a sample of one of those. We would try to do these at the beginning of the season and also at the end of the season as well. This particular one came at the end of the season. So we asked certain questions just about feedback on the year, and then they rank themselves, we rank them, and then we move from there. And if you go to the intangibles section, those are just a couple of different things that we feel are important, specifically relating to practice. So we'll go over how those relate later. This next one here is a mental check-in chart. What I like about this is a 2-week chart, so you don't have to reprint it out every single day or even every week. And I think right now we're in a really serious time where we should be checking in on the mental side of our athletes, as well as obviously the physical and the rest of it. So you can either post this on your office door, the locker room, and for us, we would do a green, a red, or a yellow, kind of like a stoplight, and just kind of go from there. So if we scan this before practice and we see there's any reds or yellows, kind of check those as red flags and check in with the kid that noted that. The next one is to seek and organize resources. And I'm going to show you again some different ways we do that with apps, drills, and some charts. I think it's really important that you know the drills because we all steal from everybody, and you got to know what it is that you're stealing. And the biggest part about that would be the emphasis of the drill. Time is important, and the purpose is the number one thing to know what you're stealing. Learn new skills to promote your players and your program. So here's a couple of different ways we do that. The first one would be to seek and organize your resources. I think in terms of seeking, that apps are such a great way for us to get organized, and they can really contribute to the growth and our overall growth as a coach and even as a person. But these ones specifically relate to us at Sierra and practice. I'm going to give you one quick way why I think that they're great. So the first one is Google Sheets. I know most of us have heard of it, Google Sheets, Google Docs, Google Forms from that platform. For us specifically, we use it in a lot of different ways, but I think the best feature of it, if you aren't familiar, is that it's collaborative. So I can be working on a scouting report at home. My coach is 30 miles this way, one is 30 miles that way, and we can be collaborating in real time on the same document. The next one is GroupMe. It's a communications app, and I've tried a lot of different apps to use with the team, and this one we've stuck with the last couple of years. One of the reasons that I think it's great is the polling feature. So I included a screenshot there of a sample of how you can take a poll with your team. So this is something that's kind of silly, asking them where they want their team meal on Saturday. But you could do obviously something that's a little bit more personal or meaningful or significant for you. And you can set the time on the poll. It's anonymous, so you don't know who voted for what, so there's no peer pressure there. So a great feature of GroupMe. The next one, I'm sure we're all familiar if you have an iPhone with the notes section, but they have recently kind of upgraded it, and I think it's a fantastic note-taking app now. So you can see there, that's my SC basketball folder, lots of different files within the folder. And now with their upgrades, you can search via emoji, you can search via word, a photo, or whatever it might be. So it's really allowed me to continue to stay organized on a device that's always with me and also collaborative. So I can share that with my coaching staff as well. And then the last one doesn't relate to practice, but it's an app that I'm a big fan of and that I have found to be really significant for me in developing as a coach and reading. So it's Blinkist. It's a book insights app. And basically it gives you book summaries, kind of like old school Cliff Notes or Spark Notes in what they call blinks. So just a cool app to check out. This is Google Forms. So again, part of that Google family. And we've used Google Forms creatively to form quizzes. So this is a screenshot of that. This was at the beginning of the season last year. We explained drills specifically. This was on drills and drills that we found are really significant and important for us and what we do. We would explain the why behind those and the emphasis of those, and then we quiz them on them. So it's just a great resource to be able to have something to use quizzes with. Here's another way that we use Google Sheets. So this is a drill database that we created. It has all of our drills listed. This is just a screenshot of it, of course. If you see the underline there, that's a hyperlink to a YouTube clip. So drills we've used more recently in the last couple of years have a YouTube clip. And then if there's a huddle column there, that means we've also put on huddle, which I'll show in the next slide. So just a great way to have all of your drills organized, the key terms, the emphasis of the drill, and any sort of variation. So if I'm ever looking for just variation in my practice plan, I'll hop on here and take a look and search by category. This next one is something I came up with it's on the same sheet as the drill finder. And this was basically just a way for me to validate what I was doing in practice. So if I'm going to say that we're going to be a transition team, but I look at my pie chart here, and this would be tracking all throughout the months or the year of the season, what we're doing and why. So if I want to be a high level transition team, up tempo, but yet my pie chart's only representing that I'm doing that 4 times in practice throughout a whole year, that's probably a problem. If I'm emphasizing to my team that I want them to box out, I'm saying we're horrible at rebounding, but I look at the pie chart and I see that we're only doing that 4% of the time in practice. Now I can know that I need to work on something. So it's just a great tool that I created to kind of validate again and check what we're doing in practices. And with any of these, because I know I'm going through them really quick because the presentation is going to take a little while. So if anybody has any questions later, happy to jump back and review any of these. So in the States, we have Huddle, and I think it's just a great tool that a lot of coaches use specifically for their games, but I would want to encourage everybody to try to use it also for practice clips or for drill clips as well, because your team already has a login, your staff already has a login, just a great tool and resource to be able to see any of your drills or practice items more efficiently. And it's just a screenshot here to show that we keep all of our practice plans. So this would be my 8 years at Sierra Canyon. Everyone's organized by year and by date. And one of the reasons I find that to be significant is that if I'm in, say this year I only have 10 people on my roster, and I've been used to having 15 or 18. But 3 years ago, I also had 10. So I can take a look and kind of see the different drills we were doing that might have suited better to that type of a roster. If we're in finals week, I can see what we were doing in finals week 2 or 3 or 4 years ago. So just a good tool to look back on. And then this will be the only thing that we chart. So this is our SC basketball competitions chart. This would be a one-day chart in practice, and really simple, self-explanatory. You put the drill up top. Did they win? Did they lose? We give 2 points for a win. You lose a point if you lose a drill, and then we'll keep track of this and post it throughout the season. So those are all some tools and resources involved in seeking and organizing yourself. The next step for preparation would be to clearly share your philosophies. I think it's one thing if you know your philosophies as a coach. I think that's fantastic. I think it's another thing if you get them down on paper, and then the bigger step would be to actually share that with your team, make sure that it's clear, and then reiterate that and hold them accountable in practice. So these are 4 different ways for us to do that. So this is our philosophy in the simplest form. The bottom would be philosophy as a player who would come into our program and then eventually graduate. We want them to better themselves, ourselves, to accomplish anything. And I was challenged to get these down to 5 words by one of my coaching friends, so that's what I did. Top left would be our offensive philosophy. We want to take practiced, made, family-first shots, and defensive, force uncomfortable, unpracticed, contested possessions. So these players will receive this at the beginning of the year, team meeting, summertime, whatever it might be when we want to hand that out. So now we're all on the same page of exactly what it is that we're looking for offensively, defensively, and for their growth as a person and a player. This would take a really long time to explain. This is our pyramid of purpose, but the reason I included it is because we will reference these 6 words down there under personify, which we say to represent or to embody. So those 6 words are a big part of our culture, as is this whole pyramid. And so it's something that, again, we would hand out. We would have lengthy conversations about this. And again, making sure that the team is on the same page with knowing our philosophy. This would be a terminology chart. And we're going to go through later a couple of slides. And one reason that I think this is really vital for your program is your coaching staff needs to be on the same page, especially with their terms. So this is just a great little kind of cheat sheet you can give your coaching staff. You can definitely give it to your players. And for your players, I would even suggest defining or having them define in like a classroom setting exactly what all that stuff means. We don't run anything complicated. We don't talk about anything complicated. We run complicated things. We don't talk about any terminology. I'm not a believer in that. I know a lot of people believe in kind of having your terms be just yours. I think that can cause a lot of confusion for a kid. And when they go on to their next team, the next level, it's going to be hard for them to adjust to new words and different words. So we keep it simple. And when I talked about learning new skills, I challenged myself to try to learn Photoshop during this quarantine time. And so this was just something simple that I came up with when acquiring that skill. And what this is this is our culture in 4 photos. And so I would present this to the parents at their parent meeting and present it to the kids at their player meeting and just say, this is our culture. What do you see here? And again, Photoshop would be a great tool to be able to promote your players and your program. So I would encourage finding new skills. So the next one on preparation would be to value your team essentials. Going to show you very quickly how we come up with those and then defining them, implementing them, and then making sure, again, you hold your team accountable to those skills, to those team essentials, especially in practice. So a couple things that we will define would be a great teammate, a practice communicator, and the term family first. Those are all really important for our culture. This is just a really small example of last year's team. We have a theme and then again, our essentials. So the team completely comes up with this themselves. We make it really player driven. And then this allows us to hold them accountable to these essentials in practice. And the list isn't always this long. It depends on the team, but I enjoy seeing them go through the process. And the last step here on the preparation step would be to make sure you decide what is an appropriate practice environment for growth and for confidence. I think that we debate all the time as coaches on, should we be doing skill work during the season? Should we really emphasize it? Should we do competitive drills? Should we do 5-on-5? How much scrimmaging should we put into practice? There's so many questions, so much debate. But I think what you need to do as a coach is to decide what is an appropriate practice environment for growth and for confidence. So before we jump into the practice planning, we are talking about practice, and that's this conversation today, and that's why it's so important. So these are some statistics that I made up, so they're not necessarily validated by any form of research, but I think the numbers are pretty accurate. So the average preseason practices for us would be September and October. We're just going to go with the number 50. The average in-season practices would be November to March, 76 practices, of course, only talking about practice, not games. The average off-season practices, June and July. Right now we're at 0, unfortunately, but that normally would be about 30. So if we're talking about our average total practices throughout the year, and this would probably be a low rate, we're at 156. So that means that 43% of my days and their days are going to contain practice. That's a lot. The maximum season games we could play would be 34. So that's if we go all the way to the state championship and we're playing a full schedule before that. that means at maximum 11% of our days contain a game. So if we're going 43% to 11%, it's obvious that we got to put our heart, our effort, and our love into practices, which is what this conversation is going to be about today. So a couple pre-planning thoughts before you actually get into making your practice plan. Ask yourselves a couple of these questions. This is what we do when we're going through our practice planning. What time of year is it? Because for us, that's going to change if we're in preseason, regular season, or postseason. How much time do you have, and what is the emphasis? Is that an emphasis of the day or your emphasis of the week? And then how can I tie in my theme of the year, which we'll talk about? Is the practice culture driven, and is it player driven? Because those are important to us. And then, of course, noting any assignments, reminders, announcements, and equipment needed. Some coaches actually will put that on the plan. I know John Wooden was a coach who used to actually write out where his ball racks would be for every single part of the practice. I think it's kind of ingrained in us that we're pretty disciplined and we know that regard. But it is a big pet peeve of mine if, say, we need the pads and the freshmen didn't get the pads out that day. But it's also my fault. So I got to make sure that, again, all these pre-planning thoughts, that I'm already thinking about the stuff we might need for that day, and then making it clear to whoever is in charge of getting it. So this is the big step, planning and prioritizing your actual practice plan. The first step there is to create your style. And we're going to talk about how what my particular style is. Are you going to handwrite? Are you going to type? Are you specific or are you general with your drills and writing them out? What is your order of events, which I think is an incredibly vital step when planning and prioritizing. What is your time limit? Do you have a time limit on your drills? And then depending on, again, what week it is, are you in a tournament week? Are you preparing for a league championship? Are you just preparing for one Saturday night special? Whatever it might be, making sure, of course, that you include that in your practice plan. I think it is really, really, really vital that you know the why behind every single detail. I don't just throw together a practice plan. I hope most of you don't do that as well. But everything is incredibly thought out. And I explained that to the team as well at some point throughout the year, that we do this right after this because of this reason. So you have to know the why behind every single detail. Make sure in your practice plan or in your pre-practice, post-practice meeting with your coaches that their roles, the terms, and the emphasis are defined. And again, that terminology sheet comes in handy there. Most importantly, though, you got to be yourself. I think there's, again, so many things that we debate as coaches. Do you play man or zone, and why? And here's the pros and the cons. And if you find it, you come across somebody who's really passionate about one or the other, they might convince you to switch. I recently saw a coach that was talking about practice, and they were so against using a whistle to the point where it almost made me feel bad that I use a whistle. But I can explain later why we do that. And then I think clock. Some people talk, again, another one of those debates. Do you have your clock on in your gym in terms of the scoreboard clock? And are you timing drills? Are you sticking to that time? All those types of questions. For us, we time every single drill, which you'll see on the practice plans. For the most part, we stick to that time. And one of the great things about it is it creates special situations at the end of every single drill that we do. So the girls know to count out the clock when it gets down to 10, and they know to take a last second shot if there's a ball in their hands. If it's a ball handling drill and they all have a ball, they all take a shot. So it just allows us to really kind of practice on special situations without even knowing it, and we're constantly aware of clock. The last one there is to make sure that we're ready to adapt as a coach to your practice plan. There's lots of reasons why. A really simple one would be that, say, the first 5 drills that you need to do, you need coaching staff there. And let's just say at a high school level, we only have 2 or 3, 1. So they got caught in traffic. So you got to be able to adapt your plan, and it changes your order of events, which again, I think is important, but being flexible and being ready to do so. A big reason to adapt your practice plan would be that we're not having a good practice, and maybe you're about to reach a goal-oriented drill, and it's tough anyways for your kids to reach that on a normal, good level basis. So maybe skipping over that, moving on to something else, because you know it can bring your practice down even more. So I'm going to show you a couple of these practice plans here. So this is just to give you an example. The reason I included 3 was to just give an example of how they're very similar. These all came from 3 different years and different parts of the season. So we have a November, January, and then March preparing for state playoffs, that last one there. So going to the November one, it says 11-6 up top. We always have a warm-up that's 10 minutes. It's always the same in terms of what I expect of the kids to do. And then we jump into usually a skill-oriented or a shooting competition drill to start practice. So if you look across there, that first drill, one is a competitive shooting drill. The next one in the middle is a skill passing drill with footwork. And then the last one is also a skill footwork kind of warm-up conditioning drill. Going back to the one on November, again, everything is there for a reason. The times are specific. I think the more experience you have as a coach, you know exactly the time for your drills. Nothing excites me more than when we hit our first water break and I'm like, we are exactly on the minute. It makes me so happy, but that's just because I'm kind of a freak in that regard. So then we get into our transition drills, again, specifically building for a particular reason. For us, the only thing I'll really mention on here of anything that we might do differently would be our water break. I'm really conscious to put 2 or 3 or 4 of those into a practice, for sure, a minimum of 2. And our rule for a free throw break, as soon as that last drill ends, immediately 2 minutes on the clock starts, so they know they gotta get moving. First person up, that's in parentheses there. Crystal, you're up for free throws. If she shoots, she just has to shoot 1. If she makes it, we go right into our water break with whatever time is left on the clock. If she misses, we go half court and back. Next person's up. If they miss, half court and back twice. When it gets to the third person, we run something that's kind of brutal called a 1-2-1 if they miss. There's usually about a minute left on the clock at this point, and that player, if they miss it, we'll just bring it in, go right into our water break, and we'll run the 1-2-1 at the end of practice. If they make it, great. If any of the 3 make it at any point, we have our water break. So just kind of giving you some samples there. If anybody wants to note anything and ask a question about specifically our practice plan, I'm happy to share that. All the way over on the left over here is always on the back of the plan would be the groups and the teams. Really important to save time, of course, to knowing what's on there. So that would be practice plans. Oops. All right, so that's planning and prioritizing your actual practice plan. The next, I'm gonna give you guys 4 drills. I'm gonna give you about 10 or so of them today. But these first 4 are drills for us that are in heavy rotation. And they're drills for the most part that we have come up with on our own or adapted, stolen, tweaked from other people. So the first one here is machine gun 4-on-4. And I apologize because, again, I have a lot to cover. I'm gonna go through these pretty quickly. So please take notes if there's anything that you need to have changed. I'm gonna change right now. Oh, I can't do that because I'm not the head person. That's fine. So hopefully these come through. Hopefully these come through well for you guys. All right, so the first one is machine gun 4-on-4. And this is basically what I'm gonna call a revolutionary shell drill. We will oversell the closeout on purpose. So you're gonna see the girls like completely closing out and they're gonna get beat on purpose. That's part of the drill. It's just a different way to incorporate doing a closeout drill without having to do a separate one. And then mainly the focus of the drill is it's a help and recover drill. And we emphasize helping outside the key. So I'm gonna let this run for a little bit and kind of notice. So it's 4-on-4. The first 2 people drive baseline side and get beat. And then the last 2 people on the white team will drive middle and get beat. I love this part right now that just happened because this kid, number 31, is from China, and she had some language issues with us this year, and so she actually didn't understand where she was supposed to go, but we didn't stop the drill, which I think is really important for coaches to remember. Don't always stop it because somebody messes up. So they took a quick shot, felt they were open. So we usually go about 5 possessions each, and then we'll switch. Sometimes we'll do 2 rounds, lots of different variations here. But again, overemphasize that closeout to get beat. And then these people down here in line have to be ready to come on the court because it's moving so quick. So this one will last a little bit longer and a couple extra passes. Show you one more here. So great helping outside the key. We show help and recover, get a hand up, and then we're live 4-on-4. And that's why I call it right there the revolutionary shell drill, because at that point you're kind of in those typical shell spots, but freedom to move and go from there. The next one is 4 screens 4-on-4. And we created this because these are a bunch of different screens you will see throughout the season. And the great part about it is we can upgrade those screens and we can change them and move them around, and depending on maybe the person that the team that we're scouting for, whatever it might be. But the typical part of the drill is down screen, and the ball's not live until we finish. Cross screen, back screen, and then kind of an opposite flex here, backwards flex, and then it's live. So now we're 4-on-4 live. On this particular, you'll see a couple of different, either doubling an on-ball screen or going under, things like that. So again, down screen, and we can either switch or get through, again, depending on what we're preparing for. Back screen, and then the ball's live right there, but they do have to wait for the screen to come. So now we are fully live, ready to go. She went under that, which was great because that was part of the scouting report for that day. They're supposed to be doubling there. She got caught a little bit on the roll. So great drill. That's 4 screens, 4-on-4. This next one is ODU 3-on-3, and this is something that I haven't tweaked. ODU 3-on-3 from Old Dominion. This is a transition drill, and it is, pause it real quick. It is hard. It is really a mentally tough drill if you're doing it correctly. So we'll put 5 minutes on the clock, 6 at a maximum. Usually for us, I've noticed we will completely die if it's longer than that. The only way that you get off the court is if you individually got the rebound, the steal, defensive rebound, the steal, or forced the turnover, whether that was they threw it out of bounds or they traveled or something along those lines. So you'll see these first couple, people keep scoring. Not this one. So she got the rebound, she makes the outlet. And then if people score, you do not come off. None of the 6 of you come off. And again, you only come off for defense, not for scoring. So we're keeping the score live. You get points for offense. We emphasize certain things that they need to do in this drill that relate to how we perform in games, stopping the ball early in transition, whatever it might be. So again, everybody's scoring. If people keep scoring and you're not playing defense, you're not locking up, you're going to get really tired. She got a steal there. We clipped it and fast forwarded for you. And again, the great part about it is because you don't get off unless you get the stop. You got to hustle, keep hustling back on defense, and then find the energy to score again. So that's ODU 3-on-3. This is 20 passes transition. And this was a drill that I ran in high school. I played for one of the greatest coaches in California, Kevin Kiernan, who's currently at Modern Day. And we ran this in high school. And what I've done is added on a transition factor from it. So a lot of coaches have seen this drill. If you have a team of a little bit higher numbers, I would say you could get 7-on-7 on the court. I wouldn't recommend anything higher than that. So we wanted everybody to be included here. So we did 6-on-6. Defense is in a full denial the entire time, trying to cause pressure on the offense, be very handsy, be very physical with the offensive player. And the offense is trying, well, both teams eventually are trying to get 20 passes before the other team. We have a couple of rules and we'll change them occasionally. But offensively, we'll say that you can't dribble, there's no screens, and everybody has to square up. Those would be our common 3 rules. Every now and then we'll add a dribble. We'll say everybody has to touch the ball, different variations. So let it run here. So coaches are counting out the score. We have them live on this particular one. You can see on the bottom here, the score board is live. So she steals it, she can go. I'll usually start counting 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and they have to score before that ends. They only get 1 shot in that transition. If they make it, they get 3 points added to their total, trying to get 20. So I kind of allowed that. That was like kind of an accidental double team. So allowed it, start counting, we're transitioning now. And again, if they score, we would add it. So now it's their ball out of bounds. A great kind of player-centered coach drill. They'll start hustling on their own. They'll get on people who are being lazy and not denying hard. So another drill, again, that's heavy in our rotation. This next slide here is going to cover a lot. So I'm going to get a quick drink of water. These are going to be ideas to consider. And this is kind of like the meat potatoes of this presentation of showing you what we do at Sierra Canyon and why we think it's successful. So these are just ideas for you to consider, because a lot of them, again, they're our own philosophies. They're what we do, but they're things that we have found to be successful for our program. So the first ideas are related to beliefs. I believe in teaching and then competing. So that 4 screens, 4-on-4 drill is a great example of that. Before we jump into that competitively, and they start focusing on their points and their stops, whatever it might be, we teach them how to guard the down screen, how to jump into help before you get hit on a cross screen from post to post, denying the back cut with your head on a swivel and looking down your arm. However it is that we teach, we make sure that they know it and they know the emphasis and they know what we're looking for before we actually compete in the drill. I personally like to look at what did I like as a player. So again, we ran that 20 passes drill when I was in high school. I think it's really important that we have a great aspect if you played the game, that you can look back and see what you liked, why, and how. But more importantly, getting that feedback from your own players. What drills do they like, why, and how? Already had mentioned that our first drill is always a skill or a compete drill. I think it's really vital that you catch your players doing right by their name. So often it seems like our players don't hear what we're saying when we're complimenting them, but that's because we're not calling out their name. Research proves and has shown that if you actually address them by name, you get eye contact, they're going to hear that compliment much better. This one is huge for our program. Again, one of those debates, do you run for punishment, running for mistakes? It's a big debate. A lot of people now, you definitely shouldn't do that. Everybody's got their opinions on it. I'm not going to share my opinion on it, but I will tell you that we have been able to share our vision that running is for discipline. It's not for punishment. And because we've been able to share that vision with our team, they believe it. They bought into it. And so when we have to get on the sideline or the baseline to run, they know that it's because we weren't being disciplined in that moment. It's not because they're being punished. And there's, I think, a big difference for that. Something cool, unique maybe about what we do for running. They all know that if they sprint together at any point of time, that we will stop running. So if they are all on that sideline ready to go and they all just take off and they're sprinting, and exactly as soon as that whistle gets blown, we'll blow it, they'll get right back into the drill. But if they're not, it could take them 2 minutes, 5 minutes, and I'll just watch one person who's going slow. And so that's big philosophy for us. Running is for discipline, not punishment. I think it's valuable if you don't just run your offenses and defenses. And it might be, in a sense, obvious to some people, but I think we get so caught up in what we're doing that we forget there's so many other stuff that we might see throughout the course of the year. So let's just say we blitz double on-ball screens. Well, let's say that 10% of the teams we play, 5% are going to do that. So we need to show our players other things in different drills. And then the last one here is install drills that relate to the game. I personally am not a big believer in like a 3-man weave or zigzag slides or something along those lines. But we will occasionally do those types of drills. But what I'm specific on when it's explaining that to the team is, again, the why, the detail behind it. There's a reason that those drills exist. And we try to do them as little as possible. But again, if we do, make your players know why. The next section is time related. So a lot of people talk about that pace of practice. People want to go faster. They want to pick it up. They don't want to waste time. So we have a term we call in between time. And that would be all those times in between, switching sides in a 5-minute drill for symmetry for layups, water break to getting back on the court, free throw line to getting to the next shot, next person who's going to take a shot. So lots of in between times. So that's something that we take a lot of pride in and we focus on. Our team knows that if we're moving a little too slow, as I mentioned, for the running is discipline, I'll give them a lot of warnings. So the first thing that I'll usually say, I'll just start counting 10, 9, and I'll go kind of quick, 10, 9, 8, 7. And they all know that means they're moving way too slow and we're about to get on the line for discipline. So just a small tool to use. We have to, as coaches, evaluate the time we spend talking in practices and the stoppages. And so you can do that in a bunch of different ways. I think the simplest would be go real time, either yourself, and probably not yourself, because you're doing the talking a lot. Assistant coach or manager, whoever, get a stopwatch and just go throughout the day and make sure you get a variety of practices to figure out that time. Another term that we use that's began ingrained in our culture, it's if you walk, we run. And so the team knows to try to run everywhere, to try to not to walk anywhere for sure. If it's a light jog, it's better than a walk. So just a common term, again, that we use to get them moving. And a question to ask yourself, do your kids know the drills by name? I think it's great if they know your drills, but it is best if they know them by name. It's going to save a lot of that in between time. The next items are culture related. So again, we talked about those team essentials. It's really significant if you are actually enforcing them. Remember, your philosophy exists for a reason. So if I'm going to talk about practice made family first shots, that has to also get considered in practice. So the kids actually know what's a good shot, what is a good defensive possession, what am I looking for. So important, again, that you give it to them clearly, present it to them, but then you're also emphasizing and holding people accountable in practice. To inspire a culture-driven practice, we will use one of those pyramid words. So again, at 156 practices throughout the year, we only have 6 words. You put those on rotation, they're going to hear those words a lot. Again, they're going to become a part of your culture. And so just a small idea to do something like that instead of like a quote of the day that they're probably going to lose. They're probably not going to forget. They're probably not listening to you, to be honest, when you're first saying it. The next part is relating your theme as often as possible. So we're really aware when we're choosing our theme of the year. We put a lot of time and consideration into it. So going into next season, our theme will be to dominate details, and to link that theme as much as possible. One of the ways we'll have detail drills. So those will be quick little 1-minute drills that they have to do kind of to perfection of the detail. So that, again, we can emphasize that throughout. Really simple. We bring it in. We say family first on 3 anytime we get a water break or after practice. But again, emphasizing those culture words. Question to ask yourself: if somebody popped into your practice for 15 minutes, what would be 3 words they would use to describe your practice? Next section would be player-driven related. I'm going to go through these quickly. The idea of giving your players timeouts during practice, 1 or 2 throughout the week, whatever it might be, up to you. Something that I say often if they ask me a question that I don't feel I should answer, I feel it's something that they can figure out on their own, my response would be that you're all smart people. And they kind of know that when that's said, that coach isn't going to help us here. We got to figure this out ourselves. It's going to allow them to be player-driven, allow them to communicate better. A question to ask yourself, the idea of not having captains and in practice gives everybody a voice. Allows some people to feel more comfortable that maybe aren't on the same skill level as somebody who might be a captain. Just an idea to think about. Another one, to make it player driven, you post the practice plan and they have to self-organize. So instead of me telling them what's next, they have to go check that, and then they would communicate with each other. Have your players run the post-practice evaluation. I'll share with you later one way that we did that. And then the last question, again, to consider, ask yourself, could your players start practice without you? I think it's very telling of a program if they could. The next one would be duties related. And do you have the ability to record and review practice? We are really fortunate. You've seen on those drill examples, we have a program called PlaySight that's 12 fixed camera angles in the gym. We get this angle, this angle, this angle, this angle, this angle. And also one of those features is instant replay during practice. So if you don't have something like that, totally understand, but try to record practices as much as possible, even if it's from a cell phone on a fixed standpoint and you're only getting one angle in practice. It's better than nothing. Again, if we're talking about 43% of our days contain practice, why don't we put as much effort into reviewing film and going over those types of details for practice time? Quickly, just covering a couple of these. Trust a consultant. It's a good idea to try to find a retired coach, even bringing in your football coach to come watch your practice and give feedback from a different sport, but a good idea to try to trust or have a consultant. This one, my coaching staff came up with this in this off season, and I think it's a great idea. We talked about all the different ways that we need to improve in practice as a coaching standpoint. And so we came up with the idea to go onto a rotation schedule. We have 4 coaches on our staff. So if it's my day on Monday, I will observe practice. I'm going to not talk and contribute into jumping into certain things. I'm just going to observe and take notes. I will have the iPad for the incident review stuff. So another great way for stoppages to end, we send players over to the coach with the iPad if it's something that's not significant enough to stop practice. I'll be the one charting if our manager isn't able to do that day. And then I will also be the one to review post-practice clips via our PlaySight system, Huddle, and upload any strengths or weaknesses we need to work on. Going to skip to appreciation duties. And on that one, I just think that this, without speaking about it too much, this group is really, generations really entitled. And so something that we're going to implement would be really small, that they all have to clean the floor once. We all know how complicated it is, how tiring it is to clean that gym floor for practice. And we're fortunate to have somebody who does it for us every day. but they will all at least do it once, so they see the process and they're more appreciative of him and what he does for us on a daily basis. And the last ones here are creativity related. Dean Smith was one of the coaches who said that seasons are long and practices can get boring, and we have to break our routine occasionally. We got to mix it up. So I'm going to share with you a couple of different ways we've mixed it up throughout the years. I'm not going to cover this whole system here, but if you want to ask specific questions about any of them, please do. The first one I'm going to cover was a board game intermission. So this was really fun. We put the girls on teams throughout the whole practice. They stay with that team. We'll do 2 or 3 drills that are competitive, keep score, and then break. Each coach would have their own station of like a board game. So let's just say, for example, my station was Yahtzee, and they had to roll the dice and get 4 of a kind. They all get 2 or 3 tries. And then if they get points or whatever, they would add on to their overall practice score. And then they would get back into the next set of drills. And we would do that so that everybody gets to each of the coaches' board game stations. Another one that I really like is the team planning the practice. So we'll do this 2 or 3 times a year and have your team just jump in there before practice begins, say, hey, you guys are planning practice today, and you have 10 minutes to do so. It's just great to see the conversation that ensues and how they decide to put certain things into the practice. Last one I'll cover there is the 3 players kind of towards the bottom. So let's just say you have a team of 12 on your roster. You'll do 4 different groups of 3. So 3 players can't talk, 3 players can't start a drill, 3 players are part of the hype crew, 3 players this, 3 players that. Lots of good things come from doing something like that. You get people who are normally talking, you put those as the ones who can't talk. So other people have to step up that day, whatever it may be. So the next section here are lessons that I have learned or noted throughout my career that I just think are important to share so that people can hopefully grow and improve at whatever rate they're looking for. So the first one is to be fully present. One kid can negatively affect a whole practice, and so can a coach. And the key words there are to be fully present. The second you walk into that gym and it's your time for practice, start scanning, start looking around. Something like that mental check-in chart would already get you a good head start. Just be aware if a kid looks down, they look different because their small energy offness can totally affect the rest of the practice. Number 2, enforce the emphasis. You get what you tolerate. A really good example for that for us would be the you walk, you run. I really want them moving quickly, getting place to place, not wasting time. But if I'm tolerating it, it's going to keep happening. So we got to make sure that we enforce the emphasis, whatever that may be. This one was stolen from Kevin Eastman. I think he's a genius and says a lot of good things to steal. Clarity has to come before accountability. I think so often we hold our players to whatever standard that we want them to be accountable to. And a lot of times they aren't clear on what that standard is, or they aren't clear on what that accountability is for that drill or whatever it may be. So again, going back to sharing your philosophies and making those things clear, now they know, now you can hold them accountable. If it shows up often in a game, it should show up often in practice. And my example of that is that I just never came from a program where we shot a lot and we did shooting drills in practice. And I think the mindset there is that your kids should do it on their own, that they should get into the gym, they should work on that part. I don't have time for that, right? So a few years ago, we just weren't shooting well. And it's like, why aren't we doing it? Something like that pie chart would come in handy there. Well, we don't put any shooting drills in practice. Yes, they get a lot of shots up, but we're not getting shooting drills where they're going to get tons of reps. So that would be my example for that. Desire player feedback and apologize when necessary. The key word there is desire. I think that we have to seek our players' feedback and we have to want to hear about it and take any positive or negative and then apply it. And apologizing when necessary can be big or small. I'll give you kind of a smaller example would be if we're preparing for a game and let's say the team presses us and we didn't see that in any of the film that the coaching staff went over, and their press cost us 6 points, which cost us the game. After that game, all we're going to talk about is me apologizing. Hey, that's on me. I didn't have you guys prepared for that. And so something big or small. The next one, make everybody feel valued, and specifically relating to injuries and sickness. I learned this really early in my coaching career that I was being very selfish. I think something that I'm good at is that I value my players. I make them feel that way. But if we're talking specifically about injuries or sick, if the top player was out, I was the one over there getting them their ice and, hey, are you icing every 15 or 20 minutes? But if it was player 15, was I doing that? Because player 15 might not be even contributing to practice, let alone a game. So although I cared for them, I wasn't showing it the same way selfishly because I wanted player number one to get healthy and get back on the court and help our team, right? So just make sure that not only are you making them feel valued as players and people, but specifically in those moments, are you checking in the same way 1 through 15? This one's talked about all the time, but just re-emphasizing. And again, these are lessons learned, so I'm happy I learned it. Observe and listen more and talk less. The next one, the players want to be pushed and challenged. What it doesn't say there is that they want to be degraded or demeaned to do that. So know that they really want to be pushed and challenged, and then figure out how you can do that appropriately. Patience is huge. I think all of our coaches know that that's a word that we often hear. My specific lesson is to not ignore the ones who frustrate you. You got to latch on to those kids. And I have found that I have grown tremendously as a coach and a person by doing that, and that they in turn grow as a player. So every year I'll kind of seek out the 2 or the 3 that I know could change my mood, could make me negatively affect a practice if I'm just constantly worried about the mistakes that they're making, or that they're not listening, or they're not going hard. So latch on to those ones. And the last one there is to love coaching more than winning. We are all competitive people. We all love to win basketball games. But the second you can learn the lesson to love coaching more, I think it'll change your life. This one is really quick for me to get on a pedestal because it's really important to me. Value nutrition and maintenance importance. So this actually gets its own slide. I think that we fail so often in this category. Don't know the reason why. It's either we don't want to give the time. Like I said, my first 10 minutes of practice are devoted to a warm-up. We don't want to give the time, or we don't want to babysit them. We don't want to sit there and watch them. Maybe we're not educated enough about the warm-up and the nutrition and maintenance process. But for whatever it is, selfishly, it affects our season. And then unselfishly, it's really important for your player's body, obviously, and for the course of their career. So I wish when I was in high school that somebody would have talked to me more about nutrition, would have talked to me more about stretching, because it's very significant for your future. A couple things that I've come across are great ways to explain that to your team is the brush your teeth mentality. Every single morning we get up and we brush our teeth. We don't think about it. We're committed to it. We know it's good for us, but it's boring and it's routine, but we do it without thinking about it 2 or 3 times a day. So that's a good way to explain it. Don't mistake routine for commitment. So again, we have a 10-minute warm up, but just because they do it every day doesn't mean that they're actually committed to doing it correctly. There's a big difference. And something to say, great teammates don't get bored with the basics. The next thing I did a survey in kind of preparation for this presentation, and asked a bunch of different players, collegiately, professionally, and at the high school level, what they thought were the best and worst things about practice. And what makes me feel good is that I did this, I prepared the rest of the presentation before I included this, and kind of feel that we're on par with things we're doing at Sierra. So the first are things that and these are in order of the things that the players ranked that they love. And it was a free response, so there was no multiple choice option for them. They could put whatever they wanted. Players love drills, and specifically that they're competitive, they're fun, and they're challenging. The second one was they specifically mentioned shooting and fast break drills. And you can imagine it's because they're usually competitive, fun, and challenging. And then the last thing, we're all aware, players love to scrimmage. They love to go 5-on-5. They love to make it as game-like as possible. The 3 things that they thought were the worst part about practice, number 1, without hesitation, was running for mistakes, for punishments, or for other people. They despise it. And again, we've been able to get away with that because our vision is that it's for discipline, not for punishment or mistakes. The next thing that they mentioned was there was no variation in the practice, and that could have been via the warm-up, the drills, and that could have been day to day, or that they always start with the first 4 drills every day, whatever it might have been, no variation. And the last, not enough scrimmaging. Going to show you a couple more drills here. So in relating to talking about those competitive shooting drills, I'm going to show you 3. We do a lot of competitive shooting drills, so I wanted to try to pick some things that maybe you haven't seen. So the first one is Hubie's. And this is named after Hubie Brown. You get 2 minutes on the clock. And this particular station, we have 6 baskets going on. Passer, shooter, and a rebounder. Every time you make 2 in a row from the same spot, you get 1 point, and you are always moving. So if you make 2 in a row, you move. You miss the first one, you move. You make the first, miss the second, you move. So best basket to watch right here is the main court. And, you know, there's lots of little things. We hope they're going faster. We hope they're doing this or that. But it's a fun competitive drill. We'll put the top score on the clock and go from there. This next one is pace shooting. So they're going to be in groups of 5 or 6 people. We usually give them 1 less ball per group. And if you have a smaller team, like 10 to 12, you can make it even smaller groups. They'll get a lot more reps. They'll get a lot more tired. And so I'll call out whatever shot we're looking for the round. So everything is off the dribble, 3-pointers only, 1 dribble pull-ups, stop moves, whatever it might be. Whistle will randomly blow during that round. Each made basket is worth 1 point. They need to get to 50 before the other teams do. So on this particular one right now is just pass, make a move, it looks like, and then shoot. And so again, they get their own rebound and then they pass to whoever's open. That's why you have 1 or 2 less balls per group. And they should get them moving pretty quickly, which is why we call it pace shooting. The next one is 5-level shooting. Oops. So this one is 5-level shooting. Sounds like what it looks like. We will go 5 spots here, and you have to make 5 at the 5 different levels through those 5 spots. So that's 25 total made shots as a group. And you can either work from inside to out, so layups to 3-pointers, or 3-pointers into layups. And just going to fast forward here to when they're at a different spot. And this was one of the first times we were doing this with this group. So I was telling them like how you actually have to move to a different level and be ready to go. So that's 5-level shooting. We do this one for 3 minutes. Sometimes we'll also add that everybody on that team has to make a free throw also to finish that drill under 3 minutes. So next ones are just being creative with your drills. I think one of our biggest strengths at Sierra is that we are really creative with the drills we come up with and how they can relate to our team. So the first one here is patterns. This is a drill that we will always do when we are scouting another team, prepping for scouting another team. So the focus is that we will break down their main action. So you'll see in this drill, this particular team ran a lot of different sets. So instead of going over all 20 sets, which your kids aren't going to remember at this level, we will break down the action and give them lots and lots of reps of that particular action. So in this particular one, first thing was guarding the shuffle cut. And so again, they'll jump on quickly, get 4 new people on. Sometimes we might do this into 2 different groups if the group at practice is too big. This will be guarding an elevator action and then them coming off of that Iverson cut afterwards. And sometimes we'll just get a lot of the reps in and guard it. Sometimes we'll finish it and go live. But it just allows them to see a lot of the actions they might come across. And another great thing about it is a lot of teams run similar stuff. So we've already drilled guarding the elevator, and now we can be prepared for the next team. So this is called patterns, and the team knows that it's always related to kind of our scouting report. In a way, we know it's time to focus and get specific about those actions. The next one, again, something that we are creative to come up with that related specifically to our team. So I'm sure a lot of people do a drill that's similar to this, but we call this Falcon 5-on-3-4-5 because Falcon was the name of our fast break system. And so you'll see 3 people here on defense, 1 person down here on the opposite baseline ready to jump on. All 9 are now coming, all 8 are now coming back 5-on-3, but now they get an extra defender. Point of throwing somebody back there early is it kind of eliminates that super simple pass ahead for a layup, and now they actually have to make a decision in a fast break, but they're still in an advantage. And now we have somebody on the other baseline jumping on, so now it will end 5-on-5. And again, the emphasis of the drill was running our fast break system. Okay, the next one is Iverson shooting. Again, a drill we came up with because we were running an Iverson series shooting. So this was a quick part of the drill that of the play that you will see us then drill. So it looks like there's chaos because there's so many basketballs, but it's very controlled, and they know what's going on. Again, we will get lots of reps practicing our play. One of the reasons we do this at the beginning of the season is we had 15 plays that looked a lot like this. So it causes them to get that kind of muscle memory of that rep, and they're going over that drill over and over again, and it shows them all the different options, and again, lots of shots coming from it. And this last one here is 3 passes. So there was a point early in the season where I told my coaching staff, we are horrible at passing the ball, and specifically post passing. And it's partly because we never really had to do it. If it was on my pie chart, it was like going to never be on there because we never had post players necessarily in the last couple years that we didn't have people in the post. So now we have a bunch of people in the post, and we got to be able to get them the ball. So we came up with this drill so that they would be able to feel comfortable making the pass. So started small, and there's different steps here, but this post player will get 3 touches. The guards were told specifically the type of pass they had to make. So she was told to fake, dribble baseline, and go that way. Lots of reps for the post players that are more realistic and game-like. And then I'm going to fast forward here where we will add defense. So now the guards are rotating, guarding each other and getting more defense. And you could do your 2 post players guarding each other as well to get the defensive reps as well. So that was 3 passes. So the other part of the survey I asked the players was player complaints and compliments, specifically of the coaches during practice. So the first 5, and I think these are, if you're going to take notes on anything, note this, because this came from college, professional, and high school level players. And it was almost overwhelming that like this was all they gave. There wasn't something random on the side. This first one, I couldn't believe how much it came up with, that the staff was not on the same page with their terms or their ideas. And of course that can cause confusion. So again, if I'm calling something active hands, my other coach is calling it something else, they don't quite understand what I'm talking about. More specifically, this came from college kids, and it was that their assistant coach didn't have the same idea on something as the head coach did. So going back to that planning and prioritizing step, you got to have those conversations with your assistant coaches and make sure you're all on the same page and you're united coming into practices and games. The next one was the coaching staff was either too negative, they were impatient, they were critical, or they were degrading. We all know that those are negative things and things that we should try to steer away from, but the players definitely notice it. They want to be pushed and challenged, but they want it to be done positively. The next one was stoppage. They know how much practice is getting interrupted. And they said it either came from giving too much information, long-winded speeches, or interruptions throughout practice. And it causes the players to lose focus and they space out. Coaches, we have to try to stop the stoppage time. Coaches show obvious favoritism. And that means that the perception for the player is that we're not all treated as a valued member of the team, which is what my coach is constantly saying and preaching. So I think showing favoritism is an absolute no-no, but this was noted from players. And the last one is they would prefer if the coaches allowed practices to be more player-centered, give the players more voices, pay more attention to them, listen more to their thoughts and their feedback. The things that they enjoyed, their compliments for coaches in practice. Practices are organized, they're prepared, and they're structured, which is a good form of modeling. Players love the details. I could not believe how many times the word details came up. They enjoy being taught. They enjoy receiving feedback. Again, they're okay with negative feedback, but don't put it in a negative form. These ones were quotes verbatim. They like that the coach is always pushing us or the coaching staff is making us better. Coaches communicate respectfully, allows the player again to feel valued. And the last one, they note when the coaching staff's commitment level is on display. So they can tell that you've been watching film and prepping for an opponent. They can tell that you put a lot of thought and emphasis into your practice plan or your charting or whatever it may be. So keep doing it, coaches, because they do notice it. And so the last slide here to wrap things up. This is just a challenge for us to apply ideas from books. I think a lot of times in these conferences and clinics that I come across, coaches are always asking for books. I'm one of those people. I love to read. I love to grow. I think it's a great way to do both. So my challenge is, once you're actually reading those books, what are you doing with that information? So personally, I take notes in a notebook and keep kind of like the big summaries, the big hits on the books. And so these are specifically non-basketball related books. And when I'm reading those types of things, I'm constantly thinking about practice. I'm constantly thinking about basketball and how I can apply this to my team. They're usually some form of like a leadership or business savvy book. So a couple of quotes. Don't focus on winning a championship, focus on becoming a champion. That was taken from John Gordon's The Carpenter. So how I would apply that to the team is have them define the word champion in one of our classroom settings without using the word win, and then apply that to our team essentials. Passing along useful things strengthens social bonds. This is Jonah Berger from the book Contagious. So I would have our upperclassmen share those evaluations we went over, and they would highlight their lessons learned to the incoming freshmen. I would add that the unexamined leader is not worth following. We need to keep asking ourselves tough questions. That's from John Maxwell. Good leaders ask great questions. So I would ask ourselves, what are you doing and why are you doing it? Again, knowing that why behind every single detail. We have to improve as much as we expect our players to. On the right side there, make your goal your password was a suggestion from Thaler and Kowal in Grit to Great. So an idea for your team, have them set that theme, so dominate details or whatever it might be, or any of their essentials or those pyramid words as their password. And we can maybe focus on doing that for the 2 weeks before our season begins to, again, get into that mindset. The last one came from Katie Couric's book, Best Advice I Ever Got. This was Matthew McConaughey's particular excerpt. So he says the term having trouble versus the term can't leaves the problem open to being solved, which of course always leads to a solution. So I would encourage our team to use the term having trouble and try to eliminate can't from their vocabulary. So just again, a couple of small examples of when you read, try to apply. And so that's it, coaches. I want to thank Bossy so much for having me and for including me on this conversation. Thanks for tuning in. So my contact information is there. Please feel free to reach out, call or text at any point in time. I'm happy to go over anything and answer things. I got a lot more I wish I could have presented, but wanted to be considerate of your time. So again, thank you so much. Appreciate you listening.
Alicia, you killed it, literally. That was great. I didn't have enough time to write all the notes. So quick question, can you email this presentation to the people if they ask to?
Yeah, for sure. The presentation. Yeah, I think I could get that. Yeah, it's on I've never emailed a presentation, so I'm sure I could do it.
Okay, and sorry that you can't see me. My Wi-Fi won't let me do it because I'll go off right away. So I had a couple of questions. When you were talking about post-practice plan and let the players self-organize, in your opinion, when do you think it wouldn't work?
When would that not work?
We take high school level, we take junior pro level overseas, college. Yeah. Hello, can you hear me?
Not very well. It's pretty choppy. Maybe if you could put it into the chat or something, I could read it then.
Yeah, I'll do one second.
And I know there's not a lot of us on here, so for sure, if anybody wants to unmute themselves and ask a question, more than happy to do that.
Yeah.
All right, so for post-practice plan and self-organizing, when do I think it would not work? I don't know if there's really an instance where that wouldn't work. I think it really allows the players to hold themselves accountable, allows them to communicate better and more effectively. And it's just another way for the coach to kind of be more silent. So in terms of posting it, again, it can either be on a big whiteboard. It can just be however your big or small your actual practice plan is, and it's out on the court for them to see. And so while they're in a drill, somebody's going over there and look, a whiteboard would be the best situation because it's more visible, but they go over and they take a look at it. And so again, we went from Washington passing to advantage transition. And so instead of me being the one to tell them that, somebody's already looking ahead to that whiteboard, and they can then communicate it to everybody else.
Mhm. Yeah, that would be great. Can you type? Oh yeah, you'll type it. So
Yeah.
while I have the next one, one second. Okay, so my next one, you also mentioned that players are looking for feedback and they're trying to get better. But how would you manage telling the negatives to them to make sure they don't get upset and they don't lose that motivation?
So I think it's just the biggest key there is how you are communicating it with your players. And before we mention all that other stuff, the pre-preparation, knowing your players. So in those meetings, one of the questions I did ask them is, how do you like to be coached? And the kids will tell you straight up, I enjoy being coached this way. One of my young freshmen actually said, I wish you would have coached me harder, because I think you were scared to coach me because I was a freshman, in terms of giving her more critical feedback. And so I think asking them those questions and actually noting their answers allows you to coach each kid as individuals, which I find to be really important and significant to do that.
Mhm. And when showing team film before the game, how much would you want to be negative when you're showing, okay, we need not to let them do this and this? So how much would be positive versus negative?
I say that we actually show probably more critiques in our film than we show good things, but we do both. And so one of the things that we'll do in a film session, if we're looking at negative stuff, is we make sure that we finish it with positive stuff, especially because we want to put that positive imagery into their mind, whether that's going into the next practice or whatever it may be. Definitely don't want to end with them seeing negative thoughts. I also try not to clip too much negativity that's, again, visual for them. I don't want them like replaying in their mind, like, look how many times we didn't box out. I'd rather them show them the times that they actually are boxing out.
Just so they have that positive mindset instead of just thinking how bad they were.
Yep.
And one more I wanted to ask. Oh yeah, let's go with this one. How often do you poll your players throughout the year for their input on various areas? So the program, coaching, practice, etc.
All the time. And it's never a formal setting. Well, sometimes it would be a formal setting if we're in like a team meeting or something, but it's usually informal. So I just have a really good relationship with my players. I think it's one of my strengths, and they feel really comfortable coming by the office at any point. I'm on campus. They'll come eat lunch with me. They'll come hang out. Our schedule allows for that to happen is one positive about that. And I think just the fact that, if we go into that pyramid that I showed, the level of trust and respect that we both have for each other. And so it happens all the time in natural settings. They're just coming in, they're talking about practice. Hey, what'd you think of the drill we did yesterday? It was new. Did you like it? Yeah, I liked it, but it'd be cool if we did this, this, or this. Oh, cool. Note it. So it happens really, really often. I would say the ones that are purposeful on my part in terms of pulling them would be maybe outside of individual player meetings. Gosh, it's all the time. It's after practices, it's before games. So it's a lot. It's a lot. I think it's an important step.
Yeah, I love that you're always looking for the feedback from players because to me that's important. And if we take coaches from Europe, and if we take professional level, most of them want it to be where not them looking for players' feedback, but they want to dictate to players what they do. And the one that you're talking about, your philosophy, I really love it because players get more freedom.
For sure.
And one more I have on the video. So when we did in one of our first presentations, we had assistant coach for Australia national team, and his idea on video was when he's watching it with players individually, he wants it to be somewhere outside of the office or outside of a basketball gym, just to make sure player is a little bit more relaxed. He's not stressed that the coach will be showing something negative. And so he said he does it often in coffee shops. Do try to do something like that.
I'm sorry, you cut out on one part. Doing what in coffee shops versus in the office?
Doing individual video breakdown in a coffee shop or somewhere else outside of gym. Have you tried something like that?
I wouldn't say that we have, and part of that is just, again, the relationship I have with my team. If I ever felt somebody was uncomfortable in a setting like being in the office, then I probably would look into that. But I've never really received that feedback. So Yeah, I'm totally open to doing it. I think it's a great idea. But for us, it's never been necessary.
Got it. Got it. And there are two more questions. Are you a full-time coach, or do you also teach classes at the school in addition to coaching?
Well, I would say we're always a full-time coach, no matter what else it is I do. But I'm an associate athletic director at the school. We're a K through 12, so I teach seventh graders, and I'm the middle school athletic director, and then an associate athletic director for the high school. So I'm pretty busy on campus throughout the day, but always, forever, will be a full-time coach.
Mm-hmm.
Let me read a
What is,
couple. Go ahead. Go
yeah.
ahead. Sorry, Bossy.
Yeah. What is the average length of your practices? Does that include film time? If not, how often do you go over game film with the players?
So average length of practice would be 2 hours, and we shorten that would be in season, and we're completely stricken to that based on our gym availability with the boys basketball program and the volleyball program. So there's not too many instances where I could go over that time. As soon as we get down into certain aspects of the year, whether that's preparing for a game, I'll not never, but usually it would be closer to an hour and a half. And then occasionally we'll just do hour practices. But generally speaking, it would be a 2 hour practice. That does not include film time. So that's the good part about now I have to get off the practice court at 5:30. We could go watch film or we go lift weights or whatever. And we're on a very regimented schedule in that regard. So even in season, we lift 3 times throughout the week or 2 or 3 times, depending on the week, and do lots of film sessions as well. So that allows us to kind of be around for a little bit longer. I will never go over 3 hours. So I'll never do practice plus weights plus a film session. Usually really aware of their time. Sierra's a really high academic school, and they all have a lot of homework, and they travel to get to campus and all that stuff. So try to be kind of cautious of the time that they all need for other stuff as well.
Mhm.
I'll read the next one, Bossy.
That makes sense.
I
And
think
we
you're
have two more.
okay. Perfect.
Yep.
So the next one says, how do you
Perfect.
keep your players motivated and accountable during this period when actual face-to-face contact is limited? I think that's a fantastic question. And to be honest, because of the things that we believe in as a program, and I think the things that we feel are ingrained in our culture, I have not tried to motivate or hold them accountable during this off time. Now that we're going on 4 months, we definitely check in. We had a game night the other night. There are certain things we're doing, but until maybe we hit July, if I haven't seen them by July, then we'll start talking and we'll start holding some team meetings specifically related to basketball. But I feel that right now, if they're not motivated or being self-driven or disciplined or accountable, those are two of our discipline and accountable are two of our pyramid words, that they probably shouldn't be on my team. To be honest, it's something that that should be ingrained in them and it should be living in them right now. So for me personally, I'm really hands off right now. If they want to be developing as players, they want to take advantage of this time. I think that's on them. The next one, you have said to treat every member of the team equally, but how do you communicate with the leader of the team? Do you assign them special tasks or somehow uniquely speak with them? So when I said I didn't want to get into much about having captains, next year we will not have captains, and so that'll come to eliminate that part. But with having captains in the past, we will have separate captain meetings. We'll have different kind of rules for them in terms of them being modeling for their leadership. There are certain things that they are supposed to do, but I wouldn't say that makes me treat them any differently. I'll have those same types of leadership conversations with my freshman kids. So it doesn't mean that if you're a captain, you're being treated differently in terms of how I'm communicating with you. But I definitely something to think about in terms of making sure they don't feel that they're above the team. And so those conversations are had. Can you explain why you're choosing to not have captains? For sure. I'm always, because of that question that was just asked, I just find that each year I'm really disappointed with what I am calling leadership that I'm expecting from the captains. And with some of this player feedback, and specifically with last year, a lot of my younger kids who weren't on the same level as my captains, a lot of them said that they wish they would have felt like they had more of a voice, but the captains sometimes limit them from thinking that. And so I think sometimes captains gives an obvious mindset that one, if I'm a captain, I'm kind of above the team. Two, you should listen to me because I'm the captain. And that younger people are like, that's the captain's job in practice. Coach keeps talking about leadership, and she specifically says, captains or seniors, why aren't you guys leading the team? And so I think it allows some people to kind of come more into their shell and reserve themselves a little bit more because they don't think it's their job. And so the reason we're going next year and not having captains is it'll give everybody an equal voice. We have a really young team. I got 7 freshmen on a team of 14 next year, and really want them to feel immediately that they can be vocal in practice, that they can communicate with their teammates, that they can not be afraid to go talk to somebody because they're above them. So there's been a lot of consideration and debate. I've thought about it for years, and I finally went with it. William, if you have more thoughts about that, one of my things that pushed me over the edge of not having captains was some articles by Brad Stevens. The Celtics don't have captains. He doesn't believe in it. And he didn't do it at Butler either. So he's a couple of things he had said pushed me over the edge. So if you want to look into that.
Great. I'm writing down the article too. I'll check it out. Alicia, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Finally. Well, hopefully my internet is good enough for the next couple of minutes. So it looks like we're done with the questions too. And I just wanted to thank you again for finding the time. We'll save this presentation, this video, and it will be uploaded to YouTube. So people who missed it or the ones who attended, if you guys want to rewatch it, it'll be available pretty soon. And whenever it's done, it will be emailed to you, and Alicia will email it to you as well.
I appreciate that. Thanks so much.
Yeah, I apologize again that you can't see me, but I don't want to make the connection even worse.
No problem. Did a great job.
Hopefully next time we do it, we'll be able to see each other, and hopefully we'll be able to meet in person soon too.
All right. Sounds great. Thanks, Bossy.
Yep.
Thanks everybody for tuning in.
Day,
Have a great Sunday.